Okay, great. Welcome everybody to this webinar on tips for your first year at a U.S. American college or university. Next slide.
Okay, so just to start us off, we're going to introduce ourselves. So my name is Asha Labine. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm going to graduate in 2023, and I'm studying economics, global affairs and digital marketing, but mostly economics at the University of Notre Dame.
And hello everyone, I'm Alina Coleman. I'm from Evansville, Indiana. I'm in the class of 2022, so I'll graduate this upcoming May. And my majors are English and Spanish, and my minor is in education. I'm also at the University of Notre Dame with Asha. Next slide.
Okay, so basically what this webinar is going to be about is just some basic knowledge about your first year and the first year experience. So I would say one thing to always remember is that everyone is in the same boat. I know that a lot of you are coming from a lot farther than some of the people at your school, but everybody's in the same boat in that they're away from home and they don't really have any friends there yet. They don't really know what the culture is like. They don't know what classes are going to be like. And they also don't know what it's like to live at a dorm or go to the dining halls yet. But just hopefully this presentation will kind of give you some knowledge about some of those things. So that everyone can kind of be on the same page. And so one of the most important things about your first year is making friends is probably the scariest part. But just trying to get to know people in your hall and introducing yourself to people is always a great first step to make you feel more at home. And while these people that you meet at first might not be your forever friends, it's a good way to kind of get yourself introduced to the campus and, feel more comfortable there. And another way to do this is to go to all the silly orientation events. That first week, there's going to be a lot of activity fairs and mixers, kind of ways to mingle with other students, and definitely go to these, even though they might seem silly or you might not want to do them. Definitely go to them, and it's okay to go by yourself. A lot of people go by themselves, and they end up meeting really great people there. So I would say that that's a really good tip kind of for your first week on campus. And kind of after that, another way to feel more at home and feel more comfortable is to get involved. So this is one way you can try to feel less homesick. It's definitely not going to be the same, but getting a sense of belonging through extracurriculars or maybe recreational sports is always a good idea to kind of make more friends and get yourself involved on campus. Okay, next slide.
And one of the first things you'll encounter when you go to school will be your housing. So where are you going to live? Each university is different. So I'm just going to offer a broad overview of the different types of housing and accommodations that universities have. The primary one are your residences, your dormitories, aka your dorms. There are all types of different setups for dorms. So the most common, especially for first year students, is a double. So that's a single room, one room with two people living in it, so two beds. But there are also single rooms, which are normally smaller with you only have one person living there. Quads with four people living, sometimes in two different rooms that are conjoined. And then the largest normally is a 6-person. So you might have 2 or 3 different rooms that are joined together. Dorms come in all different shapes and sizes. Most often they're co-ed, so men and women living together in the same hall. That can be either different floors, so you might have a women-only floor, a men-only floor. Some universities even have men and women living right next to each other. And then less often there are single-sex or single-gender dorms. Sometimes there might be one women's dorm, for example, on campus. Sometimes schools like our university, the University of Notre Dame, all dorms are single sex. And then the living situation is communal. So bathrooms, showers, kitchens, common rooms, those are shared by the entire dorm community. There is also honors housing, which are like dorms, but normally better and reserved for slightly better. So they might have a fancier gym or something like that. And those are normally only for students who are part of an honors program, part of some sort of scholar program. And those types of housing situations are more common at state universities and public universities. Then there's also special interest housing. Some universities will have these where they have either a certain house that the university pays for or a certain floor of a dorm that is dedicated to some sort of theme. So a language, maybe on one floor in a dorm, students only speak German all day. There might be a STEM dorm. There also might be LGBTQ plus living spaces. And these are normally smaller communities, again, focused around a theme. And then finally, in terms of your campus residencies, there will be on-campus apartments occasionally at universities. These are exactly what they sound like, an apartment where you have your own bedroom, but you live on campus. They're often you would have a roommate, but these will be a little bit larger than normal dorm accommodations. And then, of course, there's off-campus housing. So this is off of the kind of insular plot of land and buildings that a university takes up. And this is apart from the university. So you don't pay the university for this. You sign your own lease with a landlord. The university is not liable for you in any way. This means that you might not have a meal plan, which Asha will talk about later in great detail, and there will be more personal costs, right? So paying for your own utilities, which I'll discuss later. But this can also be really flexible, and you can have more space, more roommates in their own rooms. That's something to consider. But of course, the caveat here is that the majority of universities require that first-year students live on campus in a dorm in a university residence for at least one semester, often the whole year. Other universities require 2 years or 3 years. Of course, some offer the option to live off campus right away, but the majority will not. Next slide. So these are just some pictures of different types of living situations you might encounter. So we've got an LGBTQ plus interest community at Columbia. And then in the middle here, this is kind of what I was talking about with a double room. So it's a single one room with 2 beds in it. Then you can see off-campus housing. So that's just a real house that you lease from someone. And these honors residences at Purdue that are pretty nice looking, pretty new. Next slide. And then in general with housing, it's like any part of your discernment for what sorts of universities you want to apply to, you need to do your research. This is something a lot of people leave out when they're first researching their university. But again, you're going to live there. It's something you really need to consider. So look at the residential and housing pages for your desired university, and definitely do that kind of general internet search for YouTube, blogs, other social media from current and former students that can help you really see what it's like, because the university website is going to put up the best face. They're going to show the best pictures. You want to know what it's really like there. The other thing to consider is the hidden costs, right? Reminding yourself to stay within your budget. So especially if you live off campus after your first year, you might want to look into the types of financial assistance that universities offer. Some will help you transfer any financial aid that you might receive to leasing that house. That's something to consider and know about. Then, of course, there's also other costs. So your food, your furniture, transportation, if the university doesn't have a bus line, and utilities. Those are all things to think about. And those are things you don't normally have to think about living on campus. You walk to your classes, furniture, major furniture like beds, bookshelves, desks, and closets will all be provided, and utilities will be included in that price that you pay to the university. But there are different sorts of price tags with on-campus housing. So if you want a single room, a larger accommodation, or some sort of apartment, all of those can cost more. And then finally, I would just encourage you to really think about what sort of community do you want to be a part of. So when I was first applying to universities, I was applying to this one that I was really excited about, but they had like entirely co-ed dorms. So you could live right next to guys and share the same bathroom. And that kind of freaked me out. So that's something to think about and just check on. Do you want to live with people who speak maybe a similar language as you or the same language as you? Do you want to be within the university? Do you want to be farther out? What sorts of things are you looking for? And keep those on your checklist with your university discernment process. Okay, next slide. And then roommates. So this is part of housing and dorm life. These are some of my friends' roommates, and then obviously you can see my roommate down in the bottom, and Asha has her roommates up in the top right. So they come in all shapes and sizes. Unfortunately, none of my male friends had any pictures of themselves with their roommates for some reason, but I assure you that men and guys in dorms in the US also have roommates, in case anyone was wondering. So next slide. So the first thing to know is that your first year, you will most likely be assigned some sort of random roommate. That means a lot of different things. So at some universities, you fill out a questionnaire where you say, I like to wake up early, or I don't like loud music, or I like my space clean. And then universities try to match you based on that sort of compatibility. Others are totally blind. So you have no real control over the process. Then there are other universities that allow you to select a roommate. So if you by chance know someone at the university you're attending or who's also attending with you, you may be able to set up that way. And then I'd also encourage you, just like anyone nowadays, to use Facebook, GroupMe, and WhatsApp to connect with potential roommates. So if you don't want to be entirely random and your university allows you to declare or pick a roommate, I would encourage you to go that route. There are often other students looking for roommates. And then this is also how you would connect with your roommate, obviously, after, if you go through a random selection process, this is how you would connect with them. And then just some general expectations. Obviously, you're two people living in a very small space. Or more. You can have more people living in a small space. So that means there are some things that will come up. There are going to be natural conflicts. It's important to focus on what you have in common. Maybe you guys both like a certain singer, or you guys both like a certain TV show. That can be an obvious way to bond. And some people do meet their best friend, their future maid of honor, bridesmaid, or their ride or die or something like that. But most people just, meet someone that they can live with, and that's okay. I'm not, with my first year roommate, my random roommate, we still follow each other on social media, but we don't really hang out together. We're not really close, and that's normal. That's okay. I'd encourage you to, at the very beginning of the year, to form some sort of roommate agreement written out, a kind of contract where you say, this is what we're going to do. So I'm not going to invite friends over after a certain hour, after 2 a.m., right? Or I'm going to ask my roommate before I invite someone over. I'm going to make sure the common spaces are clean, right? Those sorts of things, and being very explicit with them can kind of prevent conflict. So you can go back to this document and say, see, look, we talked about this. Let's keep it here. And really, if something is bothering you, so for example, this past year, my roommate's alarm was like really loud, and she would snooze it like 9 times before she got up. And that was just really annoying to me. I said, hey, it's pretty loud. Can we tone it down to where you can still hear it? But I won't necessarily wake up. And we did that, and it worked, and it was great. But of course, as I said earlier, some conflicts will arise. Now, there are resources for you to go to if this sort of thing happens. First, your first line of defense is your RA, or your resident assistant. That's another older student who lives in the same hall as you, who lives in the same floor with you. And they are kind of your go-to person for everything. So if you need your light fixed and you need someone to place a maintenance order for that, that's the person to go to. If you need help picking your classes for next semester, that's a person to go to. If you need help finding counseling or mental health resources, that's the person to go to. And of course, your RA will also help you work out disputes with your roommate, be the mediator. And then I want to assure you that in really extreme cases, if you're really afraid for your safety, universities are not going to make you live with someone that is in any way dangerous to you. And there is always the extreme option to move midway through the year. And then also always the solace that after your first year, you're normally free to pick a roommate. You might stay with the same roommate from freshman year like Asha has for the past couple years, or you might find a new one like I did and my roommate did.
Yeah,
so
could I just
yeah.
say something really quick?
Yeah.
So about the Facebook groups, usually there's a maybe class of. So I'm sure some of you are, what would that be, like 2025, 26, depending on who we have here. So if you look up like your university class of a certain year, you'll find a lot of people who are looking for roommates who'll be like, hey, like I really like to watch movies and I'm looking for a roommate who also likes to watch movies. And so that can be a really good way to find a roommate. And just kind of as Alina said, roommates are kind of hard. Usually before this, all of us, the only experience we've had living with someone is maybe a family member. So, or maybe you've had your own room this whole time. So sharing a room with someone and living with someone can definitely be an adjustment. But for the majority of people, it definitely works out. And their roommate freshman year is a totally livable living situation.
Yes, for sure. And again, you can meet really good friends that way. And you might end up deciding again to continue rooming with them. It might really work out. So don't be afraid of the random either. That can be a great way to meet new people.
For sure.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, so after roommates, we're going to talk about food. This is kind of one of the unique things about living on campus is that you will have to go to a dining hall. So this is kind of like a centralized place where a lot of students go to get food. Some universities have maybe 2, some have like 12. It obviously depends on the size of your university, but they all look something like this picture here at Rhodes College, Tennessee. Just this kind of communal buffet style eating space. So the most important thing to know about dining halls is that you're going to have some sort of a meal plan your freshman year if you're living on campus. So the important thing to kind of note here is that meal plans are all different at different universities, and you want to make sure you know what you're getting when you sign up for a meal plan. Sometimes they just automatically sign you up, and usually that's how they take money from you, is because they give you a meal plan that has way more swipes or way more money than you actually need. Like a good tip is you need less swipes than you think you do. Like sometimes they give you 3 meals a day and some sort of cash, and you're not going to need the 3 meals a day if you also have some sort of points that go along with it. So kind of along those lines, dining hall meal plans are split up kind of into 2 categories: per meal swipes to like maybe get you into the dining hall, or some sort of points, cash, that sits on your ID card. That's kind of a form of dining dollars that'll get you food at on-campus restaurants or maybe individual items at some sort of cafe. So it can be confusing, but just know which one you're putting your money on before you actually get it. And some people choose to, maybe they don't like their dining hall food. Some people choose to switch their dining hall plan. You can usually switch it maybe a week or 2 into the semester if that's something that appeals to you. A lot of people just keep their dining hall plans, but I know some people who really like to cook, so they will kind of get their really light, really basic dining hall plan and then also get some sort of groceries to go along with it. So food delivery services, or buying your own groceries is always a really good option for those people. And then, of course, if you live off campus, you're going to have to be doing these things anyways. So in terms of groceries, one of the tips that I've learned when buying my own groceries is that, you might be in a small space, but buying in bulk is often a lot cheaper than buying things individually. So if you know you're going to eat like 4 boxes of cereal a month, if you buy them all in bulk, all at once, usually you can get some sort of discount or coupon on that. And that's really helpful, as broke college students. So next slide. Next, we're going to look at classes. And so one of the most important things about classes is that I know everyone here is probably a very high achieving high school student. And while good grades might have come naturally to you, or studying might have come naturally to you in high school, in college, you're going to have to earn your grades, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get adjusted and kind of make this change. So there's going to be long-term projects that you're going to have to make deadlines for yourself and try as hard as you can not to procrastinate. I know that's the easiest thing to do, is leave it to the last night, but more often than not, this does not work. And making study groups, if you're really struggling in a class, this can really help you maybe meet new people, and also help you maybe get a little more resources for a certain class. And kind of along these lines, staying organized with your classes, you're going to have to juggle a lot of things, extracurriculars, different kind of events, and also your classwork. So making some sort of planner. If you like your planners online, I like to use Notion, which is like a desktop app. That's just kind of like a notebook workspace that I really enjoy. And a lot of people I know put their deadlines into an Excel sheet and kind of cross it off as things come along. And if you're more kind of pen and paper, a daily planner is always helpful to stay organized and on top of your deadlines. And okay, next, looking at the different types of classes offered, especially when you're signing up for classes, kind of knowing what you're signing up for. So at the top, we have a picture of a lecture style class, which is a really big hall, maybe 100 people and one professor standing at the front, basically talking at you and you take notes, versus a seminar style class, which is usually at maybe smaller private liberal arts colleges. Is a picture of that is kind of in the bottom there, and it's a professor and a smaller group of students, and it's more discussion based and question based, and definitely a smaller class feel. And then the last type of class is a lab, mostly for science, some sort of science major. And usually those are longer. So if you're planning on being a science major, kind of fitting that into your schedule and knowing what you're getting into when you sign up for maybe a 3-hour lab. I know some that are that long. And so just making sure you know what you're signing up for. And a really good tip with your classes is to get in good with the professor. They could be a deciding factor in your grade, or maybe extra help outside of class, maybe getting you a tutor or helping you find a study group. That's always really helpful to go to your professors for that. So you're going to hear this a million times, but you should go to office hours. The professors are sitting there by themselves waiting for students to come and talk to them. You are making their day 100%, even if you just go in and say, hi, like I'm in your English class, like your 12:30 English class, and introduce yourself. That's going to go a long way with your professor. And also asking about any sort of research that they do on the side is definitely going to get you bonus points. So I definitely recommend doing that. And then next, kind of exploring campus to find your perfect study spot. I know people who really like to go into academic, maybe classrooms after hours and study in there, because that's kind of the environment that they usually learn in. And I know people who much prefer sitting at a cafe with a coffee in their hand. So just kind of exploring campus, getting to find your perfect study spot. I know that really helped me kind of get comfortable and finding a place where I can just sit down and do my work and focus on my classes. I thought that was really, really important. Okay, next slide. Okay, lastly, mental health. This is kind of something that I know everybody's excited to go to school and everybody's excited to meet new people, get new experiences. One of the things that, comes as a shock, maybe when you get right sorry, when you get right to school, is that it's going to be hard. You don't know a lot of people, and it's a completely different environment. And kind of being prepared to feel overwhelmed those first couple of weeks with all these new things you're learning and all these new people you're meeting is definitely a good thing to do. And also, kind of as Alina mentioned, maybe asking your RA where the campus counseling centers are. There, you should not feel like there's any stigma around it. A lot of people have a really hard time the first couple weeks of school, just kind of getting adjusted, and even knowing where these resources are for maybe later in the semester or around finals when you're feeling super stressed. It's always just good to know where these resources are. And in college, you kind of have to take your life into your own hands. There's nobody telling you what to do. So setting your own schedule and making sure you carve out time to take care of yourself. So exercise is a good way to do this, self-care, and with these things comes balance. You know, self-care isn't just blowing off a class because I feel too stressed and it's self-care. I don't really want to do it today. That's not really self-care. It's about a balance, you know, making sure you get your work done, you go to class, you know, early, making those deadlines for yourself, trying not to procrastinate so that you have all this free time to explore the campus and go to these super fun events and hang out with your friends maybe on Friday or Saturday so that you don't have to be stressed about that test on Monday. You know, making that time for yourself to have fun is super, super important. And so, especially for you guys, you know, coming from Chile, culture shock is going to be very big. And, you know, there's a lot of people coming from around the US, so you're going to get a lot of different tastes of American culture. But your first year will probably be the hardest, just kind of trying to adjust. And maybe even your first month. But, you know, the beginning is always difficult, just trying to adjust, and just remember that there are resources for you and that there is, you know, space for you to kind of get adjusted to this new environment. So just trying to keep that in mind is that it will get better. It might be kind of hard at first, but it definitely will get better. Okay, and so that concludes our presentation. If you want to switch to the next slide, we will now be taking any questions that anybody may have. I mean, it's totally okay if nobody has any questions. I guess that means we just really did our job.
We're supposed to see them in the chat function. They said they would put them up on the screen. I think it's okay. If there are any.
Okay, sorry guys. I was speaking, but I guess you couldn't hear me because I wasn't on screen. So there haven't been any questions just yet, but I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more with the dining hall situation, this whole term of swiping. I think that that's like a novel concept for students. I don't know if they really understand what that means when you say swipe.
Sure. So it's like, so a lot of the times your meal plan is included on your student ID. So with that card that you get at the beginning of the semester, you'll enter a dining hall building and there'll be some sort of like, it's kind of like a subway stop where you either like tap your card on there or you kind of swipe it through, maybe like a train subway stop. I guess is the best thing to compare it to. And then there's these little doors that open and let you in if you have enough per meal swipes left on your card. So that's kind of what they're known as, just kind of how you get into the dining hall. You have a certain number of entrances to the dining hall that you get maybe per week or per month. And that is what is known as a swipe.
So like there's a limit, like you could potentially get to the end of the month and be out of swipes for the month. Is that a possibility?
It is. That's why it's super important to like get to know your meal plan, because some of them do it by day. So you only get maybe 2-3 swipes a day. Some of it do it by week. So you maybe get 14 swipes a week and you can kind of do that however you please. Or it's just a set number, 300 for the whole semester, and budget it however you want. So it's just super important to get to know what meal plan exactly you're signing up for.
And once you're in the dining hall, I went to school way much too long ago to remember. But once you're in the dining hall, like you can eat whatever you want, or is there a limit, or is it?
So a lot of the times, if you're using a swipe, it will be like buffet style, unlimited. You can kind of go back and get whatever you want for a certain swipe. But then there's also meal plans that have more like a point system. So you'll get all of your stuff from around the dining hall, and then you'll go check out with your card, and then they'll deduct a certain number of points from your meal plan. And so there's two different sides to it, the swipes and the points. And sometimes they're combined, sometimes there are two separate meal plans. So it's very confusing, and definitely read up on it before you sign up.
Yes.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And I would say there's also all sorts of ways you can be clever about how you use your swipes and your points. So once you're in the dining hall, there's this joke, 3 meals, 1 swipe. So you could potentially, sit in a little hidey hole in the dining hall and just stay there all day and eat 3 meals if no one kicks you out. They normally don't. You can, sneak some Tupperware in and take some food. You're paying a lot to go to a university, so I think that take a little bit of food,
They'll survive.
Exactly.
Okay, we do have a question now from Nicolas, and it's appeared on screen.
Yes. Okay. So are Chilean/Latino communities common among U.S. universities? So I can kind of talk a little bit about it, and then Elena can kind of go. But I know at a lot of universities, I would say Latino communities are super, super common. A lot of the times they have certain clubs, or they just all know each other and are all friends with each other. And I know at Notre Dame, they have one of the restaurants / bars, but only if you're 21, has a Latino night. So Thursday nights, a lot of Latino students come, and there's really not anybody else that's allowed in. So I think there is a lot of solidarity among the Latino community, and I think that if you search it out, you can definitely find it at whatever university you end up going to.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It might be a little bit harder to find a Chilean-specific community at your school. You'll probably get to know pretty fast if there are other Chilean students there, and obviously have some sort of hangout. If there are a lot of Chilean students, there might already be a club, like a Chilean student union, that you can join. There are really frequently, like LSA, Latino Student Association, is on a lot of campuses. You can meet other people there. Also, a lot of times there are specific groups of friends or clubs that are related to South America broadly, or Latin America broadly. So you might have Latin American student union or student club. That might also be a place to find friends. And then there's always these off-campus communities too. So engaging with local Latino and also immigrant communities from all over the US and all over the world. You'll find in any sort of place really nowadays. And at Notre Dame, there's also Latino House, which is a house that people from the Latino Student Association, their seniors, often rent the same house year to year. So there are different seniors, but same club. So there are always all sorts of ways to get involved. That's the long way to say that.
Yes,
I also think most universities have orientations for international students before like the regular freshman orientation. So it's another opportunity for you to like meet other international students.
Yeah. I know I have one friend, he's from Ireland, and he had like a virtual, this was before COVID, this was when we were freshmen, but he had like a virtual program where he got to meet other international students, and he said that really helped him, and that was really cool. So if, the university offers something like that, I would definitely recommend it. He said he got a lot out of it.
Cool. Well, Nicolas says thank you very much, by the way. And I think Claudia was going to had a question, right?
Yeah, I was going to be online as well, but my camera died on me. It says like I had to reboot, so I'm not going to do that right now. So I just wanted to ask you guys. So, for example, if you can share, like, did you experience somehow some kind of culture shock when you started university?
Yeah, I mean, I think even from like a U.S. American perspective, and I was traveling within the same state as well. There is a sort of particular culture of university life, right? So it is different from uh, anything else you might encounter, really. So um, I don't know what else to say about that. Personally, I was very shocked that no one at Notre Dame follows basketball, which is very important.
It's a football school.
It's a football school. So that's another thing with sports culture. You'll find out a lot about different kinds of sports. So obviously universities have soccer, but American football, basketball. Some schools are really into like volleyball and swimming and different things. So that's definitely part of it. That's a kind of a culture thing, is learning about how
which teams are important and which teams aren't.
Yes.
And then I would say that, I mean, similarly, kind of, I don't really think I can speak to culture shock as much, but my roommate was from South Texas, so practically right near the border, and she struggled a lot, you know, coming to school in Indiana of all places. It was definitely very different for her. She noted like the weather's obviously very different, and it affects you more than you think it will, just kind of being away from home and like a completely different environment. And also she said like the music people listen to, like people didn't really listen to like her music, or like the music people played at parties wasn't the music she grew up hearing. So it definitely took her a little bit longer to get adjusted than maybe say me coming from like 200 miles away. But it was definitely something that, you know, we all understood. We were all kind of there for her, but it was also just something that she would have to teach us a little bit about, and then we could teach her a little bit about kind of like the school culture, or like play her different music, or like watch her TV show, then watch our TV show. It was just kind of something that you had to work at together, and I think your friends are definitely a really helpful resource when it comes to that.
Great. Thank you, guys. Oh, you know what? Expanding a little bit on that, like the activities, for example, weekend on campus. I know you guys are close to a bigger town, right? And so what do you do? Is it common to go, for example, there on the weekends, or
Yeah.
just stay on campus?
I think it obviously depends who you are and depends on your financial resources. But I know people who go either to Chicago or Indianapolis, because Indianapolis isn't that far from Notre Dame either. Like every other weekend, because they have the cool museums and they have the cool restaurants and they have kind of the rooftop restaurants, look at the skyline, look at the lake kind of things. So there's definitely you know, easy ways to do that. And, you know, you'll definitely know someone that has a car. While it might not be you, it'll be your roommate's friend that they'll let you borrow it. Like there's definitely ways to get around, either that or through trains and buses. Those are also super common to kind of get around anywhere. But also a lot of the times with like college towns, they'll have a lot of culture around them. So a big part of like a college town is obviously the college, but there's a lot of other people living there. So there's like the cool museums and still like art, sculptures, fountains. There's still a lot of cool stuff in these towns, and they're definitely not as small as they may seem, I would say.
Yeah, and I personally have never gone on a weekend trip to Chicago. Maybe I'm missing out a little bit. I have been, but not during a school week. But I would say there's lots to do on campus too. So on campus is like a community in and of itself. The university, because again, the university is not just selling you classes and education, they're also selling you this experience, right, of going to a university. So there'll be concerts on campus, sometimes small concerts, different sorts of dances.
Plays.
Yeah, yes, all sorts of things. And your friends will also, there'll be parties of different types that your friends may invite you to. And those are all different sorts of things to do. So you won't be bored, I would say, just staying.
Yes. Sure. Okay, so it looks like we've got a question here. Can you tell us a little bit about your study routines?
Okay, I can go first.
Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent of doing the homework as soon as you get it. So that doesn't mean doing your 20-page seminar paper the first day it's assigned, but that does mean doing the reading as soon as you can get to it that day. So your day will look pretty different based on your schedule, but you'll probably have these gaps between classes that might be 30 minutes, an hour, and that's pretty short. But I'd encourage you to use that to do some of your homework. So whether it's just doing a reading or doing a problem set for econ or something like that, or writing some sort of short reflection, all of those things are best done early so that later you can take a little bit more of a break. So I would say that I try to schedule myself, if I can, especially when it's not the end of the semester, a day off at the end of the week. So I'm part of the marching band. That means I go to all the football games and play my instrument. And that means that a lot of my Saturdays are just entirely busy. So I have to work ahead in the week so that I can do that and not be worried. Yeah, I would say, is there anything else, Asha, that you would recommend?
No, I totally agree. Just if you know you're going to be busy, kind of scheduling that ahead of time. So, as I mentioned before, I really like to use Notion to kind of schedule my days and weeks and assignments. So, kind of writing out some sort of, mini deadlines for like maybe a big project as soon as it's assigned, kind of knowing when you need to get each of these done. Personally, when I study, I like to put on my headphones, turn on the noise canceling mode, and just completely like shut out the world and drink my iced coffee. And I'm one of those people who can either work for like 4 hours or like 30 minutes. Like there's really no in between. So I either have to get everything done or like one thing done. And so for me, that's just what works. I have to really be zoned in to do my work. But I know a lot of my friends who like to do this thing called the Pomodoro technique, which is a really good study method, which basically means you focus on something, no distractions, no phone, no nothing for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And this is supposed to be some mathematical, scientific way to be the most productive. So it definitely is about what works for you. I would say those first couple weeks, staying on top of your assignments, not letting it pile up, and getting to know yourself and your study routines to kind of stay on top of this, harder course load. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. So definitely just getting to know yourself is super important.
Yeah, I think a couple other things that popped into mind while you were talking is, unless you go to maybe like University of Chicago, you don't need to be studying all the time. Like we said, mental health is really important, and that means balance. So I personally, I never, if it gets to midnight, I'm not working on it. Like it's gonna, if it's due the next
That's
morning
me
and I get to
too.
midnight, it's done. Like that's as far as it's going because I got to go to bed, right? I have to sleep, and that's important. Maybe saying I'm not going to work past 8 p.m. on a Friday. That's for sure not, or 6 p.m., whatever you want to cap it at, right? Those sorts of things help you balance and have that social life. And while staying on top of your coursework, I'd also say flashcards are a great study technique. So Quizlet, online flashcards. There's also, what's that one that the med students use? It'll come to me later. But it's like really fancy. You like download an app. Never mind, it doesn't matter. But all sorts of flashcards, especially if you're taking a language class, you're taking an additional language, or if you're taking a class with a lot of vocabulary, maybe like an intro econ class or intro science class, and starting those early, like as soon as you get the vocabulary and adding to them, that's a great technique because you'll have them to use throughout while you're preparing for your exam.
Alina, were you talking about Anki?
Anki!
Yeah. Those are like a fancier, more like hardcore version of Quizlet.
Yes.
So you guys mentioned different spots on campus, like finding your study spot. What is your guys' each of your favorite study spots?
Okay, I can go first. So our coffee. So we have a Starbucks on campus, and it's in this sort of like student union. And there's always a bunch of people like walking by, and it's kind of like it's a little busy. Like I can't do like pure silence. I can't do that. So I get my coffee and I sit down, and I kind of like the background noise, but then I also like my music. And so that's definitely mine because you get the caffeine refuel. There's some spots for food if you need it. And I can, kind of keep myself focused. That's definitely mine.
Cool.
I think this is a trick question for me because I don't know if I have one. I'm okay studying in my room at my desk. I love the library, always a popular study spot at any campus in the library. But I think I can pretty much study anywhere. There will be at pretty much any university places that are reserved for silent study. So no one is going to talk in there. If you open a bag of chips, everyone will look at you angrily. There will always be those places. And then there will be busier places, like Asha mentioned, in the middle of a student union. You can try those out, see which one works best. Maybe one works best when you're doing math and one works best when you're writing an essay. Who knows? But try it out.
Thank you for sharing. We have another question.
Okay. So this is kind of looking at sports clubs. I assume this doesn't mean like varsity sports, like playing for the school, more like club sports. I hope that's right. So kind of talking about club sports, definitely depends on the school you're at, but a lot of the times if you have like, obviously your own skill level, if you have experience playing a sport and you were pretty good at it in high school, you'll definitely do okay on a club sports team. Like if you were the bench warmer in high school, they do make cuts on club sports teams. Maybe recreational sports is a better fit for you. But club sports is definitely a really great option. They also get to travel, which is super cool. And yeah, Alina, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say there are all different levels. So obviously you have the student athletes, the people who play for the university. And they have to be pretty good. They get selected.
Way better.
Way better than the rest of us. And then the club sports, again, those are more or less competitive. So if you want to do something like swimming, that's probably a little bit harder to get on, but something like, something that's not as popular in the US, like cricket, you can probably get on.
I don't know if many schools have a cricket team.
We have a cricket team.
No, we don't, really?
We do. They practice in the Fisher Grad parking lot. But that's an aside.
Or they have, I think they do some really weird ones too. They have like ping pong.
Yes.
All right, I guess that's not weird, a little bit more uncommon. They have ping pong. Let's see. When I was kind of looking at schools, there like I played volleyball in high school, and I was considering playing club volleyball when I got to school at Notre Dame. And I know like a lot of people who tried out for the team made it just because a lot of people don't really want to make the commitment to travel on the weekends. That's kind of a sore spot for some college students, leaving campus on the weekends to play sports. But if that's something you're interested in, I think that you will have a pretty good shot at it. But I did recreational sports, hand volleyball, and a lot of people who did sports in high school end up doing the recreational sports. So you do have a little bit of competition, but also it's like fun. It's way more fun. You can bring your friends to like any game and just have them jump in, and you can meet a lot of really cool people that way too. And it's like not as terrible as it may seem. Like you would think that like nobody has any experience, like it's just like rec sports is just for fun, but you know, it's still like people know how to play the game. Like it's still super fun.
But if you feel like you're not very good at it, you'll still have fun playing rec sports.
Yes.
Hopping in on a team. You can get together, you know, a basketball team, a volleyball team with your friends and play and do terrible, but you'll have a lot of fun. So there are all different levels of sports you can join. And I think there'll be a home for you whatever you want to do. Thank you again for that question.
Thank you so much, Alina and Asha again. We don't have any more questions for today, and we're close to the time. So this has been great, fantastic. Thank you so much for all the information, all the tips. Next week, we're going to have on Tuesday and on Wednesday. So on Tuesday, we're going to have at 6 p.m. You'll be talking about deciding on your major and how to choose courses.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to add anything else, Martha?
No, not really.
Well, thank you guys again. This was really great. And for those of you who joined us today, hopefully you'll be able to join us next week as well and continue with this information series. Yes, so we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll
Thank
see
you
guys
so
then.
much. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good week.